Japan is known worldwide for spotless, clutter-free homes. But here's the hidden truth nobody talks about. Many Japanese seniors are quietly drowning in stuff. Behind closed doors, there are entire apartments stacked so tightly that even emergency crews can't push their way inside. This isn't the image of Japan most people imagine, yet it's real, and it's becoming a crisis that seniors in the United States must now pay attention to. What looks like a little too much today can grow into a dangerous weight tomorrow. Every hallway blocked by boxes, every closet bursting with someday items, isn't just clutter, it's a silent barrier to safety, peace of mind, and independence. The uncomfortable reality is this: the same problem that has shocked Japan is already showing up in homes across America. Seniors are living longer, often alone, surrounded by decades of belongings that no one else knows what to do with. And when that moment comes, it won't be your children carefully sorting each item. More and more, families are hiring strangers to handle it all in one painful sweep. Ask yourself this: have you ever looked around your home and thought, who will handle all this when I'm gone? If that question makes your heart sink, stay with me. Because over the next few minutes, I'm going to share the 7 uncomfortable Japanese decluttering truths that every senior over 60 must face. If even one of them strikes you, don't wait, hit that like button and subscribe right now. This may be the video that changes how you see your home and your legacy. Nariko Valen is 74 years old, a Japanese-American woman who has lived in Oregon for most of her life. On the surface, you would never guess she struggles with clutter. Her lawn is neatly trimmed, her living room polished, her kitchen table free of dishes. Visitors often tell her how tidy she is, and she smiles politely, not daring to reveal what lies behind the closed doors of her closets and spare rooms. Because in truth, Nariko's home tells a very different story, one that so many seniors across America will recognize in their own lives. Her parents came to the United States after World War II, carrying with them boxes of belongings they refused to leave behind. For years, Nariko honored those objects: china dishes, lacquered wooden trays, worn photographs carefully framed. When her parents passed, those boxes became hers, and she tucked them neatly away, telling herself she would sort through them someday. But life is long, and with each passing decade, she added more layers of her own. Children's toys she couldn't part with, gifts from holidays, clothes she once wore proudly but no longer fits. Little by little, the space is filled. Now, when she opens her closets, she faces a cascade of belongings stacked so tightly she can hardly reach what she needs. From the outside, her home looks in order. But inside, the clutter presses in on her, silently piling up, piece by piece. And like so many seniors, Nariko tells herself the same comforting lie, that there's time, that she'll get to it later, that someone will know what to do when she's gone. What she doesn't admit out loud is the quiet fear that her children may not want any of it, or worse, that strangers may be the ones who come in and sweep it all away. Nariko's story is more than personal. It's a mirror held up to seniors in America today, a warning and a lesson. Because what she is facing isn't unique, it's the same challenge millions of people over 60 are confronting: the heavy reality of what decades of belongings mean when the years left ahead are fewer than the years already lived. Her journey is about more than just clearing a closet. It's about confronting the uncomfortable truths that lie hidden in every drawer, every box, every hallway too crowded to move through freely. And in her story, we discover 7 uncomfortable Japanese decluttering truths that may sound harsh, but could spare American seniors years of stress, heartache, and regret. Each truth is difficult, but each one also carries a chance to rewrite the ending, not just for Nariko, but for anyone over 60 who dares to face it. Truth 1. Strangers, not family, will likely handle your belongings. In Japan, a quiet industry has grown out of a reality no one likes to talk about. They are called tokushu suji, special cleaning companies whose job is not tidying or organizing, but clearing the homes of the deceased. These workers are often called in after kodokushi, lonely deaths, when an older person passes away alone with no one nearby to step in. Entire apartments, filled with decades of life, are emptied in days. Letters, diaries, family heirlooms, even photographs, items meant to tell a story, are packed into bags and taken to disposal sites. The workers themselves often speak of the sadness of holding pieces of someone's history that no one came to claim. For the families left behind, this isn't always about indifference. Sometimes children live in faraway cities, sometimes there are estranged relationships, and sometimes the task is simply too overwhelming. In Japan's urban apartments, where belongings pile up over small square footage, the work of sorting through it all can be crushing. Paying strangers to handle it becomes the only choice. But the consequence is devastating. The final chapters of someone's life are closed not by loved ones, but by outsiders who never knew them. This truth is spreading in the United States as well, though it's less openly acknowledged. More American families are quietly hiring estate clean-out crews, listed online or through local ads. They arrive with trucks, gloves, and dumpsters, clearing entire houses in days. For them, it's a job. For the family, it's relief. But for the senior whose belongings are being tossed, it is the silent erasure of their story. That set of dishes saved for the grandchildren, the showbox of handwritten notes, the carefully folded wedding dress, items full of meaning to the owner are stripped of context when seen through the eyes of a stranger. The uncomfortable heart of this truth is about control. If you don't make choices about your belongings now, someone else eventually will. And chances are, it won't be the people you imagined. It may be strangers who see only weight, volume, and disposal costs, not the story behind each object. The things you thought represented your life may never be seen that way by anyone else. Noriko thought about this when she read a newspaper article about a Tokushu Suji team in Osaka. They described finding a collection of beautifully bound letters inside an old trunk. No one came to claim them. To the cleaners, they were paper waste. To the owner, they were a love story. That image haunted her, because she realized it could be her one day, her boxes, her husband's letters, her family's photographs, all handled by strangers with masks and gloves. This is why decluttering while you are alive is more than tidying. It is reclaiming control over your own narrative. It is deciding what stays, what goes, and what story you want told, not leaving those choices to people who never knew you. Ask yourself, if tomorrow you were gone, who would be the first to touch your belongings? Would it be your children, carefully remembering you, or strangers, carrying your life story out in black trash bags? Your belongings can end up in the hands of strangers who never knew your story. The only way to stop that is to decide, while you still can, how you want your story to be kept. Truth 2. Clutter can erase your identity. Nothing steals dignity faster than being remembered for a mess instead of a life. You can spend decades raising a family, building a career, or serving your community. But if your home becomes overrun with piles, the clutter itself can speak louder than your story. People stop seeing the person and start seeing only the condition of the house. In Japan, this reality has even earned a name, Gomi Yashiki, literally garbage house. These homes appear in local news not for the people inside, but for the chaos spilling out onto the streets. Neighbors don't recall the elder within for their kindness or history, they're remembered for the smell, the sight, the disruption. Identity is stripped away, replaced by shame. It happens quietly elsewhere too, including in the United States. Seniors who once lived vibrant lives can find themselves defined by overstuffed rooms, bulging closets, or furniture that narrows every hallway. Instead of being introduced as a teacher, a gardener, or a church volunteer, they risk being remembered as the one with all the clutter. The piles grow louder than the person. The tragedy is not just social perception, it's personal. Imagine a woman who once hosted tea ceremonies, cared for her children, and kept traditions alive. Over time, her house fills with boxes, bags, and forgotten objects. By the end, her neighbors don't talk about the woman who once gave advice, offered kindness, or shared her cooking, they talk about the stacks at her gate. A man who once built a career or served his country finds the story of his life replaced by whispers about his overstuffed garage. In both cases, the human being disappears, swallowed by the state of the home. Noriko felt this sting when she overheard her neighbor describe her home as the one you can't get through without bumping into things. In that moment, everything else about her, her wit, her teaching career, her role as a mother, was erased. She was reduced to the state of her hallway. That single comment showed her how quickly clutter can overshadow an entire identity. It wasn't that she had lost her humor, her intelligence, or her warmth. It was that the piles spoke louder. This is the uncomfortable truth. What you keep doesn't just shape your space, it shapes how the world sees you. You may feel your identity tied into every object, believing that each stack of paper or each closet of clothes tells your story. But to outsiders, the objects drown you out. Instead of seeing meaning, they see only volume. Instead of seeing history, they see a house too full to move through. Ask yourself, if a friend, a neighbor, or a grandchild were to describe you tomorrow, what would come first? Would they recall your warmth, your humor, your resilience, or would they remember the boxes, the piles, the house that felt too crowded to enter? Would you be seen for your laughter and stories, or would you be reduced to the stacks you left behind? Clutter has the power to silence your presence and rewrite your story. But by choosing what stays and what goes, you reclaim the right to decide how you will be remembered. The piles should never speak louder than the person. Your voice, your story, your legacy deserve to shine brighter than anything stacked in a hallway or stuffed in a closet. Truth 3. Heavy items become life traps after 60. It doesn't always start with health problems or finances. Sometimes, the thing that keeps an older adult stuck is far more ordinary. A piano that hasn't been played in years, a towering wardrobe, or a dining table too large to squeeze through the doorframe. In Japan, these heavy objects have quietly become some of the biggest obstacles for seniors trying to move into safer or smaller homes. Many families face a heartbreaking challenge when their parents grow older. The home is no longer safe, yet moving is nearly impossible. Why? Because of the massive furniture that has accumulated over decades: tansu, heavy wooden chests, upright pianos, carved cabinets. These pieces were once symbols of security and prosperity, proudly displayed at the center of family life. But when the time comes to downsize or relocate to accessible housing, these same objects become immovable barriers. Families are forced to either pay enormous moving costs or keep their parents trapped in a home that no longer fits their needs. One widely shared Japanese case involved an elderly couple who wanted to move into a senior apartment closer to their daughter. The building was perfect: safe elevators, accessible bathrooms, community support. But they never made the move. Their treasured tansu chest and piano, which had been in the home for 40 years, couldn't be transported without thousands of dollars in special handling. The cost and emotional weight of letting go kept them in their old, unsafe house. What once served them now imprisoned them. This truth echoes across the United States. Seniors here also hold on to heavy dining sets, four-poster beds, antique dressers, and pianos that haven't been played in decades. These items carry deep emotional ties. This was where every Thanksgiving happened, or this piano was meant for the grandchildren. But as the years go by, the objects shift from being meaningful to being controlling. Instead of freedom to downsize, relocate, or even rearrange, seniors feel anchored by wood, metal, and glass. The very furniture that once gave a sense of stability becomes a weight chaining them to the past. Noriko realized this when she thought about moving closer to her daughter in Portland. She wanted the comfort of being near family, but her massive dining set loomed in her mind. It had been shipped from Japan decades earlier, and though rarely used now, she couldn't imagine parting with it. When she asked a mover for an estimate, the quote to haul it nearly equaled her month's pension. That dining table, once a place of joy, was now the reason she hesitated to make the move. It wasn't her health, her finances, or her willpower holding her back. It was a piece of furniture. The heart of this truth is independence. Heavy objects don't just take up space, they dictate choices. They tell you where you can live, where you cannot, what rooms you can rearrange, and even whether you can downsize when the time comes. And that means your freedom, the ability to choose what's best for you after 60, isn't really yours anymore. Ask yourself, if you had to move tomorrow, what objects would stand in your way? Would you stay in a house that no longer supports you because the furniture feels immovable? Would you give up living closer to family or in a safer community just to hold on to something that no longer serves your daily life? The uncomfortable reality is this: the very objects once meant to serve you can quietly imprison you. Independence after 60 depends not only on your health or finances, but also on whether your belongings allow you to move freely or force you to stay behind. Truth 4. Digital memories outlast dusty boxes. In Japan, a quiet cultural shift has been taking place among seniors who want to spare their families the painful burden of sorting through boxes after they are gone. Instead of clinging to fading photographs, brittle letters, and stacks of handwritten recipes, many have begun turning to technology. Families now use scanning services or simple smartphone apps to digitize thousands of pictures, journals, and keepsakes. What once took up closets and attics is reduced to a single file, easily shared among children and grandchildren. The result? The memory survives, not trapped in paper, but alive in a form that can outlast time, weather, and even distance. One moving story in Japan told of a grandmother who had saved more than 20 albums of photographs spanning 4 generations. The albums were worn, the bindings cracked, and many of the images were fading. Her family spent weeks scanning them, then created a digital slideshow with her favorite music in the background. When she saw her life's journey replayed on a screen, she wept, not from loss, but from relief. She knew her story would not disappear in a landfill or be forgotten in a dusty box. It had been preserved in a way that her great-grandchildren, not yet born, would one day experience. In the United States, seniors are only beginning to embrace this shift. Many still believe the true memory lies in holding the original paper or object. And while there is beauty in that, the reality is harsh. Paper yellows, ink fades, and boxes are often tossed when families cannot manage the volume. Children and grandchildren, living in smaller homes and faster-paced worlds, rarely keep physical stacks of cards or recipes. What they cherish instead are voices, videos, and curated memory books that bring stories to life. Noriko came to understand this when she finally faced the showboxes of letters her late husband had written to her during their early years together. At first, she felt that letting go of the paper would be erasing his memory. But with her granddaughter's help, she recorded herself reading those letters aloud. The family combined his words with her voice into an audio collection, then paired them with scanned images of the original letters. What had once been fragile and hidden away became a living legacy, accessible with a click. Her children and grandchildren could now hear both the past and the present woven together. The deeper truth here is about legacy. The next generations don't want to inherit closets full of paper, they want to inherit experiences they can actually access. A video of you telling the story of your childhood, a recorded recipe in your own voice, or a digital album of your life events will mean more to them than piles of fading photographs they may not recognize. Ask yourself, if your grandchildren wanted to know your story decades from now, would they find it in a box of yellowing papers, or would they hear it in your voice, see it in your face, and feel it in the memories you chose to preserve? Your stories survive better in living voices and images than in fading paper. Legacy isn't defined by the volume of things you leave behind, it's defined by how you choose to carry your story into the future. Truth 5. Clutter can literally block your rescue. When most people think about clutter, they picture inconvenience, tripping over a box, not finding something you need, maybe feeling embarrassed when someone visits. But in Japan, clutter has shown itself to be far more dangerous than embarrassment. Emergency workers there have publicly admitted that one of their greatest challenges isn't the disaster itself, it's getting through the front door. In homes where seniors have allowed belongings to pile up, fire crews, paramedics, and even rescue teams responding after earthquakes have been delayed, sometimes fatally, because hallways and entryways were too crowded to navigate. In those moments, the difference between life and death wasn't skill, medicine, or equipment, it was whether or not clutter was in the way. One fire department in Tokyo reported needing extra minutes to push through stacked newspapers and broken furniture in an older man's home during a blaze. By the time they reached him, it was too late. Another case following the 2011 earthquake revealed how aftershocks toppled boxes in already cluttered apartments, blocking doorways so rescuers couldn't get in quickly. These are not exaggerations, they are real examples of lives cut short, not by age or frailty, but by piles of things that no longer served any purpose. The United States faces the same hidden risk. Seniors often assume that clutter is harmless as long as they can still get around. But what happens when paramedics arrive with a stretcher and can't maneuver it down a hallway lined with storage bins? What happens when firefighters need to reach you but a door won't open fully because of the stacks behind it? Every extra minute lost clearing a path is a minute you may not have to spare. Nariko thought she was managing fine until she slipped in her kitchen one evening. Luckily, she was able to call her neighbor for help. But as she lay there waiting, her eyes landed on the narrow entryway to her home, half blocked by stacked containers of seasonal clothes. For the first time, she imagined what it would be like if an ambulance crew had to rush in. Would they even be able to reach her stretcher? Would the path be wide enough, fast enough? The fear that came over her in that moment was unlike anything she had felt before. This is the uncomfortable truth. Clutter can do more than crowd your home. It can stand between you and survival. A pile of boxes may not seem like a threat, but in an emergency, it can cost you the most precious thing you have, time. Ask yourself, if paramedics needed to reach you tonight, could they get through your front door without moving anything? Could they roll a stretcher down your hallway without stopping? If the answer is no, then it isn't just clutter you're keeping, it's risk. Your home should be a place that protects you, not a place that endangers you. And the choice to clear a path now may one day be the choice that saves your life. Truth 6. Decluttering is a gift to your community. Clutter doesn't always stay politely behind closed doors. In some neighborhoods of Japan, it spills outward, onto sidewalks, into alleys, across balconies, until it begins shaping the daily lives of everyone nearby. Neighbors call these places gomi-yashiki, garbage houses. They're more than an eyesore. They invite pests, block walkways, and pose fire hazards that could spread beyond a single home. For the person inside, the belongings feel personal. For everyone else, they're a constant reminder that one individual's choices can quietly endanger an entire community. One Osaka neighborhood fought for months to have city officials intervene after an elderly man's home became overrun with scrap metal, broken appliances, and bags of recyclables stacked as high as the windows. The piles collapsed more than once, spilling into the street and forcing children to walk in the road to get to school. When a fire inspector finally visited, he warned that if a blaze began, it could wipe out multiple houses in minutes. That man never intended to put his community at risk, but his possessions reached further than he realized. This isn't unique to Japan. In the United States, similar battles play out quietly. A front yard filled with rusting cars or broken furniture changes how neighbors live around it. Overstuffed apartments increase fire danger for entire buildings. And when clutter draws rodents or insects, they don't stop at one property line, they spread. What feels like my stuff, my business rarely stays that way. Nariko discovered this when her shed collapsed after a storm. Boxes she had stacked for years broke open and blew into her neighbor's vegetable garden. Mortified, she realized her storage habits weren't as private as she thought. Her neighbor had been living with the sight of the sagging shed for years, quietly concerned about what might happen if it finally gave way. In one instant, her clutter wasn't just hers, it had spilled into someone else's life. That's the uncomfortable truth. Clutter has a ripple effect. It consumes resources, when firefighters must clear piles before entering, or when city services are called to intervene. It erodes trust between neighbors who feel unsafe or inconvenienced. And it puts family members in the painful position of having to defend or explain conditions they didn't create. So ask yourself, if your home caught fire tomorrow, would your clutter endanger only you, or would it put others at risk too? If pests nested in the piles, would your neighbors suffer along with you? What story is your home telling to the community that surrounds it? Decluttering is not only self-preservation. It's an act of responsibility. By clearing your space, you protect more than your own health. You protect your neighbors, your street, and even your reputation. What you keep may feel private, but sooner or later, it touches others. And when you choose to let go, you give a gift that extends far beyond your walls. Truth 7. Clutter pushes away the support you'll need most. Imagine reaching a stage in life when help is finally available, nurses offering home visits, neighbors checking in, church friends wanting to bring meals, and turning it all down, not because you don't need the support, but because you don't want anyone to see inside your house. That is the quiet reality many Japanese seniors face, and it is becoming more common in the United States as well. The shame of clutter keeps doors closed, and with every closed door, connection slips further away. In Japan, social workers have documented countless cases of elders refusing in-home nursing care after surgery or illness. The reason isn't pride in their independence, it's embarrassment over the mess. One woman admitted she would rather skip treatment than let a nurse walk past the bags of belongings stacked in her living room. Another stopped accepting sitter-provided meal deliveries, telling workers she was fine, when in truth, she didn't want anyone to witness the chaos inside. These choices weren't about refusing care, they were about refusing exposure. Clutter had become a barrier stronger than illness itself. The same quiet wall is rising in American homes. Seniors who once thrived in social groups or religious communities begin slowly pulling away, declining invitations, avoiding visitors, making excuses. The words often sound harmless, "I'm too tired," or "another time." But beneath those phrases lies fear, the fear of someone stepping into a space they no longer feel proud of. Over time, that fear builds isolation. The very people who would have provided companionship, watchfulness, or hands-on help drift further away. Noriko learned this lesson painfully. For years, she hosted a small circle of friends for card games, a tradition that kept her laughing and connected. But as her spare room filled with boxes, she began canceling nights, telling the group she was too busy. Eventually, they stopped asking. Her clutter hadn't only taken her space, it had stolen her friendships. The room wasn't just closed off, her life was. This is what makes the truth so uncomfortable. Clutter doesn't only occupy your home, it dictates your relationships. A crowded hallway might mean a caregiver cannot roll in equipment. A piled-up living room might mean a neighbor feels uneasy stopping by. But most of all, the shame clutter creates convinces seniors to hide from the very people who want to help. Slowly, the door closes, not because friends or nurses gave up, but because the home no longer feels open. Ask yourself, if someone knocked on your door tonight with a warm meal or an offer to help, would you welcome them in? Or would you make an excuse, keeping the door shut? Would your home be a place of connection, or a silent wall between you and the support you may one day depend on? Clutter doesn't just close off rooms. It closes the door on people. And in the years after 60, when connection and dignity matter most, that loss may be harder than the belongings themselves. Letting go isn't only about creating space, it's about keeping your life open to the support, companionship, and love that will sustain you. Noriko once thought her home was a safe container for her story. Every heavy cabinet, each wooden dresser, and every box stacked along the hall seemed to carry memories she could not bear to part with. But the truth she discovered was different. Those very objects began to own her. The bulky furniture that once made her feel secure became barriers. The paper letters from her late husband, once a comfort, became fragile burdens stored in boxes no one else could access. Even the pathways through her home grew narrower, until one night she tripped and realized that what she was clinging to could one day cost her her life. That moment shook her more than any lecture about decluttering ever could. She realized that if she didn't make changes, her legacy would not be the love she gave, but the clutter that weighed down her family. It wasn't the memories themselves that were the problem, it was the form in which she was trying to hold them. A towering dresser wasn't love, a dusty box wasn't her husband's voice. What mattered was the meaning, and that could be preserved without trapping her inside a dangerous space. So she began making deliberate, bold choices. She donated her oversized furniture to a local shelter, knowing that someone else would find comfort in it instead of letting it block her own safety. She turned to her grandson to help digitize her husband's letters, scanning each one into a folder that could be shared with the whole family. What once sat locked in a box in the back of a closet now became a living archive, accessible to her children and grandchildren with the click of a button. Most importantly, she cleared a safe path through her home, wide enough for her walker if she ever needed one, open enough for emergency crews should the unthinkable happen. Her family's reaction was not what she expected. They didn't thank her for donating a dresser or for letting go of a few boxes of papers. They thanked her for something deeper, the freedom to visit her without worry, the reassurance that she would be safe in her own home, and the gift of memories they could actually share instead of burying in storage. What she thought was an act of loss turned out to be an act of love. And something else changed, too. Neighbors who once whispered about her crowded home now spoke with admiration about her courage. Her children no longer thought of her as burdened by things, but as a woman who faced hard choices with strength. She was no longer defined by clutter, but by her dignity. This is the transformation decluttering can bring after 60. It is not about empty shelves or bare rooms. It is about ensuring your safety, honoring your story in a way that can be carried forward, and showing love through preparation. Every item you choose to release is not a loss. It is a deliberate step toward freedom, toward being remembered not for piles of objects, but for the life you lived. After 60, decluttering isn't about loss. It's about dignity, safety, and love. Don't wait for strangers to decide what your life was worth. Choose what to release now, while it's still in your hands. If this gave you a new way to see decluttering, hit that like button, share it with a friend over 60, and subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors. Because the smartest decluttering doesn't erase your story, it makes sure it's remembered the right way.